if you set aside infectious diseases, what are all the leading causes of human sickness and death? The number one comes heart disease and stroke. Then comes cancer. Then comes diabetes. Then comes pulmonary diseases, and of course neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and dementia. Can you imagine a condition in human body which can be considered as a precursor for all those disease conditions, or maybe it can be even considered as one of the most valuable early signs of these diseases? And that condition is called insulin resistance. In the United States, almost 80% of the people have insulin resistance. Let me try to explain what is insulin resistance. What is insulin? We all know insulin is a very important hormone that is produced by the pancreas, which is situated behind our stomach, and it is considered as the master metabolic hormone. And what's glucose? Of course, whatever food that we eat, the major nutrient that is present in the food is carbohydrate. Whatever starch or carbohydrate that we have through our food get digested and get broken down into the basic carbohydrate molecule, which is called the glucose. Now, glucose is one of the most important fuel for all the human cells, including our heart, our brain, our muscles. But if the cells has to utilize this glucose, it has to enter from blood into the cell. Now, how does this process happen? Once the glucose enters into the blood and when it reaches the surface of the cell, insulin also reaches there. And now the insulin has to get attached to a peculiar receptor in the surface of the cell, and that's called insulin receptor. You can just imagine just as a kind of a glove in the surface of the cell. And then the insulin get attached to the receptor, and this attachment triggers a complex or a series of chemical reactions that goes into the cell. You can just imagine like kind of a key that is being inserted into a lock, and this series of chemical reactions that happens inside the cell creates a passage for the glucose to enter into the cell. Once the glucose enters into the cell, then only it can be completely utilized by the cell for the production of energy. Now, what is actually insulin resistance? Insulin resistance is a condition wherein the insulin fails to get attached to the insulin receptor, and so the body responds to this condition by producing more insulin. What is the best way to judge you are having insulin resistance? Is to measure the level of insulin in blood. Now, the best way is to assess the level of insulin in the blood, preferably at the fasting level. The gold standard that is accepted across the globe is something called a euglycemic clamp test. But it's a highly complicated or a highly sophisticated kind of a test that can be done only in a very true clinical settings, and that's not practically possible in the field conditions. But as we discussed, if we have insulin resistance, it is a precursor for a series of conditions. It can be cardiovascular diseases, it can be stroke, it can be obesity, it can be pre-diabetes, diabetes and double diabetes. It can be hypertension, it can be dyslipidemia wherein your cholesterol values varies, or it can be a fatty liver disease, it can be osteoporosis, it can be sarcopenia wherein we start losing muscles, it can be a condition called gout, or it can be a hormonal kind of a dysfunction that happens in young women, which is called the polycystic ovarian syndrome, or it can be an erectile dysfunction which can happen in the gents, or it can be Alzheimer's or dementia. So the list continues. So just imagine how important is to assess the performance of insulin and to know whether we are having insulin resistance or not. Now, the good news is that you can just visit a quality lab in your city and go for a test that is called HOMA-IR. HOMA-IR means homeostatic assessment of insulin resistance. It should be done in a fasting condition, say maybe at least 12 to 14 hours of fasting, preferably in the morning. You need to know your fasting blood sugar. We need to know our fasting insulin, And the formula is fasting blood sugar into fasting insulin divided by 405. Now fasting blood sugar should be in milligram per deciliter and fasting insulin should be in international units per ml. If your HOMO-IR value is less than 0.9, it shows that you have good insulin performance. That means you don't have insulin resistance, your metabolism is really good. But if your HOMO-IR values is above 1.9, there starts a problem. It indicates that you have insulin resistance. And if your HOMO-IR is above 2.9, you have some serious insulin resistance. Now, as we have seen, insulin resistance is connected to almost all kinds of lifestyle disorders. Now, let's come to the case of diabetes. As per WHO and CDC, a person is declared clinically diabetes when his HbA1c value is above 6.5 and his fasting blood sugar is above 126 and his ppbs, that means his blood sugar values after 2 hours of food, is above 200. There is a condition which happens before diabetes and that's called pre-diabetes. Pre-diabetes, the parameters are the person's HbA1c values between 5.7 and 6.4. His fasting blood sugar is between 100 and 125 and his ppbs is above 199. Now a person may not be pre-diabetic or diabetic and his blood values may be absolutely normal. But if the person is insulin resistant, he may be on his way to diabetes. How can we know that? We need to check whether the person is insulin resistant or not. And how to do that? His HbA1c values will be normal. It can be below 5.7, his fasting blood sugar is below 99 and his ppbs is below 140. But we need to check his fasting insulin values. If it is above 5 to 7 or if his HOMA-IR value is above 1.9, that definitely indicates that the person has started developing insulin resistance and he is sitting in a bus that is definitely to reach diabetes. Now just imagine, there is a possibility in conventional medical system we can predict the occurrence of diabetes at such an early date. How can we miss that? We are actually missing that kind of a golden period. This is extremely important in a population wherein a country like India, wherein the urban population, almost 80% of the population is, the initial study says that they have insulin resistance. And almost 50% of the urban population, they have pre-diabetes. And 25% of the population, they are already into diabetes. Now let's see what is really happening as far as the present conventional medical system treatment of diabetes prevention management is concerned. Most of the activities are centered around 3 strategies. Number 1 is to start with some drugs. It can be basically some hypoglycemic drugs, or it can be drugs that can increase the production of insulin, or it can be even injecting insulin as such. The second strategy is making some changes regarding diet. And the third strategy is to start or to persuade the patient to start some kind of a physical activity, maybe just like walking. But when we review and analyze what's the final result, I think we need to admit that nothing much has happened. Why? Because the diabetic patient continues to be a diabetic patient. Now, as far as the dietary recommendations are concerned, I think there is an absolute confusion globally. Now, we started with something called small portion meal patterns. Sometimes we ask the patient to completely shift to chapatis or kind of roti kind of stuff, or it can be an advice to bring down the intake of fried foods and fatty foods. So sometimes it has even gone to an extent of completely shifting to millets, but nothing much has happened. But I have a good news for you. In the last 10-15 years, a lot of studies has come up wherein when we start focusing on the primary causes why diabetes or conditions like diabetes has happened, we could develop some strategies which has clinically proven to prevent and to reverse diabetes. Now in Harmony, in the last 10 years, we also really started adopting these kind of global strategies based on 4 points. You can imagine this as a triangular pyramid with 4 corners. Corner number 1 is nutrition. Corner number 2 is muscle. Number 3 is mind, and number 4 is sleep. Now the question is, which is the most important thing? Now, based on our experience, I can definitely say that the apex of this triangular pyramid is of course muscles. Let me explain all these 4 points quickly. Now it's a wide topic which needs a lot of detailing. Let's talk a little about nutrition. Now the most important thing that we need to make a person's metabolism strong is to really work on nutrition. And the key point is to shift to a very low carbohydrate, high nutrient diet. Just imagine, suppose if we can restrict the carbohydrate intake in a diabetic patient to say at least 100 or 150 gram per day, that's going to produce significant results in his insulin sensitivity. And we need to make sure that he is having enough protein, good quality fat, enough fiber, lot of vitamins, lot of minerals, and all this has to be combined and judiciously connected with nutritional supplements. And if we can take that person's diet to a metabolically strong kind of a supporting kind of a diet, that can really help to prevent and reverse diabetes. Now point number 2 is muscle. Now skeletal muscles plays a huge role in re-establishing insulin sensitivity and to bring back metabolism. Now the question is, have you ever assessed your skeletal muscles? Now nowadays we have a lot of domestic equipments that can really help us to know what's the percentage of skeletal muscles in your body composition. I can say that if you have at least 45 to 50% of your skeletal muscles, of your body weight is skeletal muscles, that can really help you to reverse diabetes. Now the role of muscle is that, suppose if in a meal, even if you have 300 grams of glucose coming into your blood, if you have real good quantity skeletal muscles, the muscles can act as a reservoir, or it can really work like a sponge to take in all those glucose that is coming from the food. Why I am saying is that maybe you may be on a low carbohydrate diet, but that can produce only transient results. Maybe just a weeks of change in your diet can definitely again collapse the whole HbA1c, FBS and PPBS values. But if you have really good skeletal muscles, you can really make the metabolism strong for a longer period of time. So we need to really make sure that you shift to those kind of exercises which can really strengthen, or which can really make corrections in your skeletal muscle percentage, like muscle resistance kind of exercises with body weights or dumbbells, and we need to work on those areas. Step number 3 or point number 3 is mind. Now it's of course, we all know that if a person is highly stressed, and in this kind of urban kind of a life, it's very difficult to stay away from stress. We may be stressed with our career, with our family, with our relationship, or with our social life. But if there is too much of stress, that can produce too much of cortisol. And this cortisol can definitely produce insulin resistance. So we need to really work with patients' mental health and emotional well-being. And the pyramid's 4th corner is sleep. Now recently I read an interesting research publications. A group of young college students who had good A1C values, good insulin values, FBS, PPS values were selected, and they were subjected to a modification wherein they were permitted just to have only 4 hours of sleep per day. And within just 10 days of studies, all their blood parameters showed variations. So just imagine the role of sleep or the impact of sleep on a person's metabolism. So let me conclude. These are the 4 corners of the triangular pyramid. It's your nutrition, it's your muscle, it's your mind, and it's your sleep. Now if we can know more about that individual or the patient, and if we can design a 4-pronged strategy based on that individual's personal aspects, and all strategies may not work for everyone, or one strategy may not work for everyone. We need to personalize all those 4 points and design a protocol or a program that can really help to make changes in his lifestyle or to modify his lifestyle. So the only thing that you need is to have that willingness to change your lifestyle, because of course all lifestyle disorders origins from your lifestyle. So just changing your lifestyle is the only solution to that problem. Now coming back to the point, if you can detect that insulin resistance at a very early age, it becomes extremely important to prevent diabetes, not only diabetes, all those lifestyle disorders. And even if you have pre-diabetes or diabetes, if we can design a program based on these 4 points, I think diabetes reversal is absolutely possible.